And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Theresa Cheung, who has been researching and writing on spirituality, dreams, and the paranormal for the past 25 years. She has a degree from King's College, Cambridge University in Theology and English. And today we're going to be talking about her new book, Haunted World, 101 Ghostly Places and Encounters. Theresa, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Oh, Jeff, it's an absolute delight to be here today. Thank you.
Well, I know that you are most known for your dream analysis and dream work, but since this is going to be published on Halloween, I thought it would be fun to talk with you about ghosts.
Oh, yes, please. But every day is Halloween when you're interested in ghosts and the paranormal, you know?
Yeah, that's...
And in all my research, actually, and all the famous hauntings and stories of ghosts, I'm going to tell you now, not one of these hauntings actually happened around Halloween.
That's a great point. Well, let's start here. And I know this sounds simple, but I think it's a great thing that we should do. And that is, how do you define what a ghost is?
Oh, let me count the ways. But for most of us, it is a vision or a sense or a feeling that you have had some kind of contact with the other side, someone who is departed, not in this life. It's an invisible presence. But as I explore in my latest book, there are so many expressions of that. We could talk forever about them, Jeff. And that's why I'm so happy I'm here today, because I'm bursting to share some of them.
It sounds like to me it's much more than a person who is still existing on the other side, walking or floating amongst us.
Yeah, I mean, for most people who have watched horror movies and TV shows, a ghost is a kind of like, ooh, you know, coming through a vision, and it's very sort of like literal interpretation of it. But my book is written for everyone who's ever had a sense that there's something more to this life. And that the possibility of life after death, or a sense of connection with the other side. So you could actually put ghosts within that remit as well, but we're going more towards spirit then. There's a very thin line between spirit and ghost. They're kind of interchangeable, but ghosts are more for your history, your folklore, your legends, you know, the horror stories, etc. Spirit is when we get more of a sense of there is life after death. A medium, for example, would connect with the spirit of a departed loved one. When you have a dream of someone you've loved and lost, that's a kind of an afterlife sign that you're connecting with the essence of that person. Whenever your heart fills with love for someone that you've lost, is that a spiritual connection? You know, that's. So there is this big confusion between spirit and ghost. But they are very interchangeable, really. And ghosts tend to trigger fear. Whenever you mention the term ghosts or hauntings, people get scared because we like to be scared. It's part of human nature, you know, the fear of the dark. Spiritual is more gentle and comforting. And what I have tried to do throughout my long writing career in this area is kind of unite the two. I do want to take the fear out of the paranormal. I'm so sorry to all the movie producers and everything, but I do want to take the fear out of the paranormal and show that it is actually sensing something mysterious and unseen. Feeling a connection with the other side is part of the human experience. And if you stop anyone in the street, 1 in 2 of them will have said they've had an uncanny experience they can't explain. They've had an afterlife sign. They've had a dream playing out, an intuition coming true, all these mysterious and unexplained things that are just part of the human experience. And I'm trying to show in all my work, really, that we shouldn't fear it. We should understand it better and not immediately sort of go into panic and fear mode or dismiss and deny it. We should seek to understand it better, because I believe the more we understand what is mysterious about our existence, the more we grow as human beings, the more we understand the reason why we're on this planet in the first place. I mean, here we are trying to understand what ghosts are. We don't even understand what life is on Earth. It's so mysterious, you know. So, you know, our very existence on this Earth is mysterious, and ghosts are an indisputable part of it. Since the beginning of time, we've had ghost stories, and you can debunk them all you like. They are going nowhere. Belief in ghosts is part of who we are. It's in our DNA, and it's not going to stop.
Do you have any advice for us to get over our fear of ghosts and the paranormal?
Well, first of all, yes, I do. I talk about this again in the book. I say get comfortable being alone. I truly believe that a leap in personal and spiritual and psychic growth is when you are comfortable in your own company. You don't need to be distracted by externals or other people and things, that you're comfortable alone, and you're also comfortable alone in the darkness. I mean, when the lights go out at night, this goes right back to our childhood when our parents were tucking us in and there was this panic. Suddenly we were alone with our imagination. If we could actually understand that it is our imagination, it is our mind, it is our thoughts, our inner world that we're coming face to face with when the lights go out, and that we actually choose what happens there. It doesn't happen to us, we choose what happens to it. That is a huge, huge leap forward. And I think you can't really be a ghost hunter, although we talk about that. I'd love to talk about that term ghost hunting in a minute, because I'm not too keen on it. If you want to be a ghost hunter, you've got to be comfortable with yourself, and you've got to be comfortable with your imagination, and you've got to know that you have the choice to let in fear. You have the choice. You make that choice to let it terrify you. It's your choice. You stand your ground.
It's interesting how you talk about being alone in the dark, because quite a
Yeah.
few people during their near-death experience wind up in a place we call the black void,
Yeah.
which just is this empty black space. And some of them are very comfortable being there, and for a small few, it's frightening.
It is. I mean, the empty black void, you could actually say, is coming face to face with your own mind. People often ask me, what's the most haunted place on earth? It's all of our minds. It's the human mind, actually. And coming to terms with that, getting comfortable sitting with it, is a huge, huge step forward for your personal, spiritual, and psychic growth. So yeah, I have also interviewed many people who have had near-death experiences, because I've written many books which share these experiences. And you're right, the black void does come into it. But if you can just go with it, float with it, and not panic. Similarly, like when you have a vivid dream, if you panic, you're going to wake yourself up. The dream collapses. It's the same with the near-death experience. Deep breath, go with it, gently go with it, and then the void will open and you'll see what's behind the void. And that's where the magic and beauty of many inspiring near-death experiences happen. But yeah, there is a black void, there is an emptiness. But that's important, because that is our greatest fear. And as long as you have something that you fear so much, it's going to be a roadblock to seeing beyond the veil, if there is life after death. I don't know for certain. There is no definitive proof yet. We have loads and loads of witness statements, and amazing shows like yours give a platform to them. But we don't actually have definitive statements. And just because somebody has had a near-death experience or a vivid dream where they believe they've seen the afterlife does not mean to say that's the case for everyone. It's their experience. It feels real to them, and for them, it's all the proof they need. But for people who haven't had that, they're going to have to find their connection, their idea of what happens after death in another way. We all have to come to our own conclusions, really. I mean, there is a danger, and I hope this isn't too controversial, saying that when someone has a near-death experience, that they announce this is it. And I say, well, that's it for you, but not for every single soul on this planet. We all have our own unique journey to transcendence and finding out why we're here, the meaning of our life. And I'm thrilled when I talk to near-death experiences, actually, because a lot of them, they do have that light in their eyes, don't they? You can see they've been touched by something. And I think for me, that's kind of proof that something incredible has happened, because if it was a hallucination, typically you're drained, you're disordered, you're disorientated, despairing. That's the mark of hallucinations. But when a near-death experience happened, the person often comes back completely recalibrated. For me, that's the best proof that I can think that a near-death experience is real. But again, it is to the individual person. I love the messages they bring back of unconditional love, and the life review, and all these wonderful life wisdom that comes through a near-death experience. But again, for the vast majority of people who haven't had that, it's not particularly helpful, really, because how is it going to help them understand who they are and get comfortable with their own darkness? Because I do think that we're on this earth to understand that we are both shadow and light, and to understand that shadow and understand that in the darkness is where things grow. And it's through trauma, through fear, through passing through all this that we become greater. Then we become greater. We release our untapped potential. If it was all bliss and light and comfort and peace all the time, we just stagnate. I don't know why we're here on this planet is the ultimate mystery, but I think based on all my research that we're here to grow, to evolve, and to become higher and higher and higher versions of ourselves. And if there is life after death, I believe that learning continues. On and on and on. It's endless. Sorry, I'm rambling there, but I hope you can just say, but we went back to the void, the darkness, and that is facing that, coming to terms with that, is when you are able to do it, when you're absolutely comfortable with yourself in the darkness, and if negativity surfaces, you understand that it's a part of you, it's got something to teach you, but you ultimately have the choice about whether you let it in. Then I think you're ready to graduate as a ghost hunter and to really explore this field. If you're still trapped in the void, still scared of your own shadow, as it were, you're probably the worst person to go on a ghost hunt, although you might find it very entertaining because the power of suggestion will be so strong then, because your own fears are sort of like offering a projection, and you'll see what isn't there. And your imagination will run wild. So you do need to get a handle on your fear first so that you can become a ghost hunter. But I'd love to use the term field investigator rather than ghost hunter, actually, because if you've gone on a ghost hunt, I've been on many in my time, it's very scientific, it's very technical. And it does have the feel of an actual proper investigation where everything is systematically eliminated. But what I do want to say, with all the ghost hunts I've been on, in about 95% of cases, there is usually a logical explanation. Typically, it relates to something going on in the person's life, and consciously or unconsciously, they have projected or created something happening. But then there's that tantalizing 2 to 5%. There's just no explanation for what someone has seen, sensed, heard, or experienced. And I think that's where we need to focus as paranormal researchers on that. But you've got to get rid of all the logical explanations first and not immediately jump to the conclusion that because you heard a whisper or knocking pipes or you saw a shadow in the corner of your eye, that was a ghost. You've got to be logical first. You've got to eliminate.
Do you think that some of the biggest critics and debunkers of the paranormal do so because of their fear?
Oh, yes, because if ghosts are real, it suggests that our consciousness, our inner world, is infinite. There is no time. All the laws of science and nature have to be turned on their head. That's chaos. That's quite terrifying. And I think they potentially are scared of that manifesting in the external world, but more their own internal world, because they've built a construct that gives them comfort, that navigates the world for them. This is their way. It feels safe. They have closed their mind to anything outside of it. And it is very threatening, because what will happen if someone comes along and even if they got proof, sometimes I think for some very hardened skeptics, it still wouldn't be enough. It still wouldn't be enough, because when a mind is closed, it's closed. There is no further growth. And that's what I love about paranormal investigators and people really researching the science of consciousness, is that mind is open. A lot of them actually are fairly skeptical these days, scientists who research this. They're not definitely saying ghosts are real or I believe, but what they have is this ability to open their mind and say, I could be wrong. And I think in today's world, particularly, the ability to say I could be wrong is something that is lacking. People have an opinion and then they stick by it come what may. And that really actually is more of a ghost living death than anything, because when you close your mind, you stop growth. And what happens when you stop growth, with my definition of life all being about learning and evolving, you effectively die while you're still alive. That, for me, is the real terror.
Wow.
As I always say, the living are scarier than the dead.
It's almost
Far
like,
scarier. If you are going to a haunted location, one of the 101 in my books that I point people towards, just remember that. The living are far scarier than the dead.
well, in your new book, Haunted World 101 Ghostly Places and Encounters, you write about the 4 different types of hauntings. Can you share
Yes.
that with us?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you again for the opportunity. I'm sure I thanked you off the recording, but I'd like to thank you now and your community for being open-minded and just saying, let's hear what this lady has to say. Yeah, I do divide them into 4 categories. Again, the ghost hunting community is, very passionate, and I'm sure there will be a lot who disagree. But this is based on my research, and I have been collating ghost stories, 20, 30 years. And even before that, I grew up in a family of psychics and spiritualists. So, going to demonstrations of mediumship, etc., is kind of in my DNA. But anyway, I divided them into 4 categories. The first category is by far the most common, and that's residual. Now, this is when a person visiting a location will experience something which they believe to be paranormal. They will either see a ghost or hear disembodied voices knocking, or experience panic, or sense something. And then when they research that place, they realize that many other people have experienced the same phenomenon. And what happens, it's almost like the haunting plays on a loop. It's like a moving picture. Now, there are many explanations for this. The power of suggestion, first of all, because many of residual hauntings take place in cemeteries, battlefields, haunted castles, haunted hotels, so you've got this whole history and folklore, which is kind of engineering people who visit it there to it makes it conducive to belief that it could be haunted, especially if you hear that there's been great trauma happening in a certain room in a hotel, somebody hung themselves. If you're an empathetic person, we are very empathetic to human trauma, and we are going to kind of like sense the pain, even though we never knew this person. A part of us will sense the pain and trauma. So that's a residual haunting, which is kind of, you could say, it's trapped emotional energy from the past that is somehow locked into a location and keeps playing on a loop over and over again, a particularly traumatic moment. Or if it's been something that somebody did every day, like every day they walked upstairs and turned the keys and got out boxes of a place, that people will hear someone going up the stairs, the keys turning, that kind of thing. It's something has imprinted on the environment. It's potentially, if you look at quantum physics, for example, the idea that everything is energy, including our thoughts and emotions. And if there is extreme emotion or extreme repetitive activity, is it possible that that imprints on the environment like a recording? Possible, certainly possible. And in particular, the memory of water, there's a whole school of thought which believes that memory can be captured, water can capture emotional memory. And that's why many scenes of residual haunting take place by lakes or ponds or stone buildings where the water is trapped within the bricks. That is possibility. Can't be proved. It's called the stone tape theory, that. I personally, coming from a more, from my academic perspective and working with scientists and psychologists who've studied this, I believe it's the power of suggestion in residual hauntings. And in some locations, particularly ones who have make a living out of tourists, it's a gold mine, isn't it? Saying a hotel is haunted will bring in the guests, because people do love the thrill and the excitement, the story. So that is the great majority of hauntings, actually. It's the biggest category in the book. And for a reason, I do that because I want people to go and visit these amazing places, because the wonder of ghost stories is, in a way, it's a way of keeping history alive and memories alive. It's reminding us of our past and the lessons we still need to learn or should have learned. And I think that's beautiful, to get curious about why a specific place and the human stories which inspired these famous hauntings. And in most cases, actually, the human story which inspired the haunting is actually more interested than the reports of people who believe that they've experienced something paranormal. Go and investigate the story. It's fascinating, and many movie directors have done that, and many movies have been created out of these places. There are some very famous locations. I'm based in the UK, places like Hampton Court, wonderfully rich history of Henry VIII and his wives. And, there's a story that Catherine Howard, before she was taken away to be beheaded, she runs screaming down the hall to try and get Henry to to see her one more time, because she was very beautiful. But she had been unfaithful and he was not having it. And the doors were firmly locked shut. And people say they can still hear her screaming down that hallway. Again, trapped emotional energy. But, the magic of history and the atmosphere of the place compounding that. And I would love people to go there and actually go there themselves and see what they sense and they feel. Because what you're doing then is you're activating your own inner psychic, your own inner medium. See if you can sense anything, pick anything up. It's very enriching culturally. Most of the residual hauntings I mentioned there are many of them are US and UK based, simply because that's where the book's distributed. But I don't want you to think that the rest of the world isn't haunted. It really is. There are, ghosts are everywhere. Every culture, every country has a wonderful traditions of ghosts. And become a citizen parapsychologist and research them. Go there yourself, see what you sense and feel. So long talk about residual, but I think they deserve a mention because they keep history alive. They keep the human experience alive. The second category is poltergeist. This is an interesting category where it appears that some energy has attached itself to an individual in a location. And surrounding this agent, this human agent, weird things happen. Like, we've seen many poltergeist movies of people being thrown in the air, objects flying, weird writing on the wall. Very interesting category. I actually think I agree with Professor of Paranormal Lloyd Auerbach, who wrote the foreword to this book, that this could potentially be unconscious or conscious kinetic or psychic energy of the human agent causing it, rather than a ghost. So is it really a haunting? People think of poltergeists and ghosts as the same, but is this really created by the living? Like with the residual hauntings, is this really actually a psychic experience that you've picked up something in the environment for residual? Or in the case of poltergeist, somebody is unconsciously causing the phenomenon. Now, if that is the case, we're going to Stranger Things territory here with Seven and her ability to move objects with her mind. I think that's just as fascinating as the possibility of ghosts, don't you? The fact that the human mind could be capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, could be explained away by the agency of the living. Those two cases. The third case is where we really go into room 101, the place of our greatest fear, demonic. And now that was a revelation, because I actually started my writing career in this area after doing encyclopedias of the psychic world by doing a series of angel books where I spoke about people who believe in angels, how the angels saved and healed their lives. And so it was quite tough for me to go into this demonic. And what I found is that just as people believe in angels, people also believe in demons. Can you have one without the other? Because I'm an eternal optimist, I like to think that demonic forces, dark energies are a creation of the human mind. And again, the agency of the living, people's darkest fears being projected outwards onto the world or other people in hateful, disturbing ways. Or in the case of demonic attack, is turned in on the agent themselves, that the demon completely hounds them. But I interviewed several psychiatrists who specialize in exorcism for the book, who actually say, no, demons are real. They can cause very disturbing things in a person's mind and life, and they attend exorcisms. I also, to my shock and horror, I'm a bit naive. I didn't realize this, that there is an exorcism course conducted by the Roman Catholic Church. It's the most heavily subscribed by priests, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people every year request the services of an exorcist, of a priest to attend an exorcism. Scary stuff.
Yeah.
But also in that category is when an energy will attach itself to an object. Now that's interesting. We've all seen The Conjuring with the Robert doll, the Robert doll and Annabelle. Again, is this people projecting negativity onto something, or is it people thinking, hey, we can make some money here? What I found out also in the case of anguished art, this is art. There's several entries in the book for art that when it's changed hands, really disturbing, difficult things have happened, deaths and bereavements and all sorts for people who own this object. So over time, this object has got a reputation for being doomed and haunted, cursed, for want of a better word. Again, is that power of suggestion created by the living? And then we move, sorry to take so long to get there, to the most exciting part of the book, which is intelligent. Because in the other three cases, it's very much the living wanting to force some kind of contact with the dead in some way, or wanting to believe in it so much that it happens, or being so empathetic, they tap into they sense something in their environment. Highly sensitive people can do that. They go to locations and they can sense things. In those first three cases, it's the living being the initiators. In the final case, it very much looks like the final 10 or 11 in the book are very exciting, because this is where it could be that it's the other way around, that it's like the dead suddenly and unexpectedly reaching out to the living. These are mind-blowing cases, and I have in my life had the privileged opportunity to have many, many, many people sending me stories of afterlife signs and synchronicities, afterlife dreams, near-death experiences, which you are an expert in, where it very much feels like this is something that the human wasn't craving or opening themselves up to by going to a haunted location, etc. It just happened. And there's no explanation. And many of these people, before it happened, were skeptical, were not consider themselves believers in ghosts. I find that very interesting. In that section, I also cover the science of the afterlife, which is really, really emerging at the moment. There are many scientists studying the potential of life after death, studying the brains of mediums. That's where I've collaborated with many of them, scientists and psychologists in this area. And then the whole thing really builds up to the final entry, the most 101, which is, I say, the human mind. It's you, it's every single reader in the book, because we're all haunted. We're all haunted by our memories, and we're all haunted by unusual experiences that we simply can't explain. And I'd love people, after they've read this book, instead of saying imagination, scoffing at it, nonsense, dismissing it, to say, hey, maybe this lady from the UK who has devoted her entire life to research, it has a point. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I should look into this emerging science of consciousness. Maybe I should study near-death experiences and what scientists are saying about what happens at the moment of death. Really exciting. Even this year, there was a new study coming out that just at the moment of death, the brain lights up. You'd think it would be the opposite, wouldn't it? The brain is it's in such a gamma state. It's so alive. They can't explain what the purpose of that is. Is it because we're transitioning to the other side? Similarly, dream research. I'm most well known as a dream researcher. There's so much research now into the dream state. Where do we go every single night when we fall asleep? You could argue that every night we're haunted by our dreams. If you've listened to this podcast and you wake up the next morning and you've got a dream on your mind, where's that from? Is it the other side? And if that dream had a story, or you met somebody who's passed on in the dream state, wow, what's going on there? right? So there we are. Those are the four categories: residual, poltergeist, inhuman, and intelligent.
Well, you write about 101 ghostly places, but is there like a top 10 out of these 101 that are like must-see places, bucket list places?
Oh my goodness, I think every one of them. It's just like, as I say, it's like asking me to choose between my children, which one is my favorite, because I fall in love with the potential of all of them. I think just go through the book and see what your intuition draws you to. I have my personal favorites. I mentioned Hampton Court. I also love Haunted New Orleans, all the myths and legends and stories there. Cemetery 101, the story of Resurrection Mary. There's the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which is when you go there, you can understand why so many movie producers, if they're going to have a ghoulish or ghostly backdrop, they want that place. And you can sense the suffering of the inmates and the patients there that were treated so cruelly. It's a remarkable place to visit. St. Augustine's Lighthouse is another one that I highly recommend. But I don't want people to think that it's always like sanatoriums or cemeteries or castles. You know, I deliberately started number one with Heathrow Airport because there are so many reports of hauntings coming from there. And you would think that's the last place that you'd have a paranormal experience. But apparently there's a ghostly businessman that, some of the staff have reported, that walks around trying to find his briefcase. Now, talk about getting stuck. Perhaps that person was frequent flyer and had so many delays that his soul perished there.
Wow.
I don't know. But, literally anywhere can be haunted. If you are open your mind to it and don't commit the fashionable stupidity, as Jung said, of dismissing everything you don't understand as fraud. If you are open-minded enough and say, well, hey, maybe I didn't even know why I'm here on this planet. So how can I know for sure that ghosts aren't real? The skeptics always say to me, where's the proof? Well, I point to near-death experiences, that's witness statements. I point to the science of consciousness research. I point to other data. But then I turn around and I say to the skeptic, well, what's your proof that life after death doesn't exist? They can't offer it either. So we're really, one of us is right and one of us wrong. And we're all going to find out one day.
Have you ever dabbled into the simulation theory?
The simulation theory that everything is just a dream.
Well, that we live in like the Matrix, that we live in a
I love that.
computer simulation. And
I mean,
how maybe places are haunted that are just made up in the simulation.
Exactly. That's another theory. Who am I to say no? I can just give you my opinion and what I believe. I think that's people who love their video games and the sense of possibility that the video game gives them, and it's deliciously exciting. But in all my dream books, I often talk about the famous quote, am I a human dreaming I'm a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I'm a human? This goes back to ancient times. And so when we dream, is that our real state? And is waking life the dream? Am I dreaming this now? And then when I go to sleep tonight, do I really come home to my soul? Is that real? Who knows? But what I love, I don't want people to stop thinking that, because it makes life so endlessly exciting. And what you do, if you believe in these kind of possibilities, you approach your life in a very curious, wide-eyed and filled with wonder way. And really, that's a very spiritual way to live, because you start to see wonder in everything. You start to see signs and synchronicities and connections. And when you do that, life becomes an adventure. Not just this adventure, but the next great adventure. So let's keep on having these theories. Let's keep on talking about them, though. What I love about this day and age, and I'm so glad my soul chose to be born right now. I was born in a time, when the internet wasn't there, no phones or whatever. And I had all this passionate belief, and I had to talk to my professors at Cambridge about it. And they were like, Theresa, no, not scientific, not academic, stick to. And then I left university, I left Cambridge, and I was offered the opportunity, because of my passion for this, to unite my academic with my love of the paranormal and write an encyclopedia of dreams and the psychic world. So I lived in that time, but this was all before the explosion of interest in the paranormal, the possibility of life after death, what is hidden and unseen that we now have in the last 5-10 years. It is blissful. Unfortunately, I'm not very gifted on social media. It's not where I excel. I'm an author, I'm a researcher, and I do a lot of media in it, but I just love it because people are now talking about it. They're mainstreaming it. I do think this happened since the lockdown, as well, because everybody was dreaming big in the lockdown, and reports of hauntings actually skyrocketed during the lockdown when people were stuck in their home and actually probably hearing the sounds of their pipes and and neighbors arguing and thinking, is that a ghost? But what happened is that the people actually came out and weren't afraid to talk about the possibility of ghosts, the possibility of dreams playing out, the possibility of an afterlife connection, which showed them that death ended life, not a relationship, to talk about all these things, and long may it continue. There will always be people who will scoff and say no, but as I say, that's their prerogative. I just hope that they, for their own good, that they keep an open mind, because when you say, I know you're right and I'm wrong, as I say, that's living death. None of us know for sure about anything. And if anyone comes to you with 100% certainty and say, this is that, it's great. You can get some of their enthusiasm and their certainty, but that's just their perspective. That's their reality. We all, in a way, create our own reality. And that's actually where things are moving, because research into the brain actually, and its ability to predict and create what happens to us, create our reality. Isn't that fascinating? You know, the mysterious butterflies of the brain, that scientists are now exploring. And even in the world of science, they are saying that the brain has this ability to hone in on things that kind of confirm your bias, in a way like on your news feed when you scroll. The brain does that anyway, which, again, don't fear that. Get excited about it, because if you know that the power of my belief is so strong, start choosing positive beliefs, beliefs that raise people up and don't drag them down. If you know that your brain has this power, and I think more of us are beginning to realize that, our social media feeds confirm that, but your brain goes out in the world and it looks for what reassures it, confirms what you believe. Knowing that, choose positive beliefs, please. And to go on a tangent, but one of the number one, when people research hauntings, scientists research hauntings, the number one criterion is belief in it. So people are saying, well, I've never seen a ghost, why not? Well, the number one criterion is people who believe in ghosts are infinitely more likely to sense, feel, or see them. And I say that in quotation marks. Another criterion actually is being a bit extrovert. That was very interesting, because you'd think it was the opposite, that it was more people who are more introverted. It wasn't. It's actually people who are quite sociable tend to be more inclined to believe in ghosts as well. Very interesting.
Do you think we should replace the word haunting with something else? Because that word alone creates fear.
It does, doesn't it? But I tried to explain in my books that the word haunting shares the same root word as the word home.
Oh.
Which I think is beautiful, because when you're haunted, it's memories, it's feelings. And you could say that's where we're truly at home. So maybe we should make friends with the word haunting. Maybe when we think and talk about ghosts and memories and the afterlife, we're coming home to our soul. That's how I like to think of it.
That's a great
So
perspective.
no more fear, please. Excitement. It's a choice. You can choose to be frightened a bit, or you can choose to be excited by it.
Well, many near-death experiencers will talk about that the other side is like being at home.
Yeah, it's like going home, because they're going home to their consciousness, their inner world. But we're home all the time. We're in our human bodies at the moment. If you believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience, which I happen to do, but that's my personal belief, I'm not pushing it on anyone. If you believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we're always home, right? You don't need to die to go home. You can go home every night in your dreams, in your meditations, in how you choose to think, feel, act, and react in the world. You can come home to your soul.
Many people believe that every night when we dream, we astral travel. What do you say?
Well, astral travel implies that your consciousness leaves your body. When I think that when we're on this earth, our soul is very much within our body. And what people say, well, no, I astral traveled. Well, maybe they've had telepathy, maybe other psychic abilities there. I don't believe that their consciousness can leave their body, their physical body as such. I'm not sure whether it's an overactive imagination there. Or telepathy, or sensing something, activating the wonderful thing we have is our sixth sense or intuition when they do that. I have had many out-of-body experiences, but I don't consider them out of body. I think them as particularly vivid dreams that have usually been extremely inspiring and transcendent, and I've loved them. But I don't want to come out and say they were an out-of-body experience. People who have near-death experiences, I know, they will say that that's the first sign that they go out of body and they see themselves on the ground. That can happen. I know it can happen to musicians, interestingly. I've spoken to many musicians that when they're performing and they're in the zone, it's almost like they see themselves performing. This is fascinating, but I don't want to talk about out of body because people get scared then. Well, what happens if my soul disappears and I can't come back? I don't want that fear. That can't happen as long as you're in your physical body. If your consciousness can travel at night, well, it does. It does in your dreams, doesn't it? Where do you go in your dreams? Is every dream an out-of-body experience? I mean, recall your last dream. You were probably in a setting that was kind of familiar, but not, mixed in with all sorts of bizarre things. You were in an alternate reality, weren't you? Is that going out of body? Who knows?
Many times I dream of people that I've never met.
Wow. Do you meet them again a few days later, or do you?
No,
I want you. Oh, please, Jeff. Could you be like a citizen parapsychologist there and scientist, and if you can, reach out to them, talk to them.
No, I never see them. I just see them in the
Oh, you
dreams.
don't know who they are?
No.
Aha, they are a strange face. Where's that face come from?
Good question. That's what
Wow. But
that's what
what
I'm
I'm saying,
asking.
if you do dream of someone that you maybe have lost touch with or haven't spoken to for a while, I always say to people, why not drop them a text and say, how are you doing? Have you picked up on something psychically? As I say, many what we consider ghosts or hauntings could just be our super sense, our supernormal senses of intuition, empathy, firing up at night. And the reason they fire up at night in the dream state is because when you fall asleep, so does logic and reason. And you know, they often are barriers to believing that you can sense the impossible or you can know the impossible. For example, if you just know something's going to happen and it does, that's not possible because it hasn't happened yet. You know, we have linear time. How can you transcend linear time and sense the future? Fear and logic will say it's impossible when you're awake, but in the dream state, you see, the only thing missing is logic and reason, and that's why in the dream state you can often sense things that you wouldn't allow yourself to do in the waking state. And that's why I do actually think plunder your dreaming mind. It's an incredible resource, you know. And if you don't want to go on a ghost hunt or to a haunted location, you know, just go and plunder your own mind.
Just close your
That's
eyes.
a wonderful treasure trove.
I wonder about these people that I see that I don't know, if they are memories of someone from past lives. Is it some random stranger I passed walking on the street?
Could be all of these things, but they're all people who have messages. They're all symbols of something that has a message for your soul. Everything that happens in the dream state, nothing is irrelevant. Nothing. Everything has a message. something that your dreaming mind has noticed during your waking life, but you haven't, your ego, your consciousness hasn't noticed it because it hasn't deemed it important. But your dreaming mind has latched onto something, noticed something in your waking life that it knows is important for you to know. So what it does, it brings it back to you in the dream state. I always say it's what your heart notices, but your mind blocks out during the day. And of course, we all know that what your heart notices is what's going to bring you the greatest happiness. It's where it's where all true contentment lies. But so often in our busy lives, we're so outside in rather than inside out, which is the recipe for a happy life, that we don't notice things. We dismiss them. We dismiss the whisperings of our intuition, but in the dream state, it's intuition unleashed. There's no guardrails. The guardrails are off because your conscious mind, your ego, logic, and reason is fast asleep. And the ego, logic, and reason are very controlling. They're the dominant partner when you're awake. The intuition barely gets a look in. It's too gentle. It speaks in the language of symbol and metaphor, which people just get so frustrated because they don't understand it. And I've written many dream dictionaries where I try to help people decode their dreams and tell them, look, you've got to think like you're a poet or an artist. You're expressing your mindset in symbols and metaphors and associations. It's a night poem that's been written for you. Now you've got to be like a literary critic and go through it and understand it. But in the dream state, the dreaming mind will bring your attention to what you really need to know for your personal growth and for finding fulfillment in this life. And to bring it back to ghosts and hauntings, as I wear, it's Halloween. Afterlife dreams have had a huge amount of research. People who've dreamt of departed loved ones, in over 90% of cases, when you've had a dream of a departed loved one, it really, really helps. It helps you move beyond grief to a state when you can have a relationship in spirit with a loved one, where you can think of them with a smile before a tear, and that's quite beautiful. So if you have loved and lost someone and think, why aren't they reaching out to me? Have you dreamt of them? They probably have been reaching out to you if they've appeared in your dreams.
Well, if people want to find out more about your new book, do they go to Amazon or a website?
Oh, a website would be great, www.theresachung.com. There are a lot of books there. Forgive me, I am not a serial killer, as I say. I'm a serial author in this area. I write extensively about dreams and astrology, intuition, but I've also written a lot about near-death experiences, the afterlife, and Haunted World is one of my latest titles. I also have another title called The Dream Cure, which came out with HarperCollins a couple of weeks before. And I'm blessed that I have 4 more books coming out next year. I'm on a mission to mainstream this and to show people that it's their future. It's going to raise them up studying all this. And you just got to get rid of that roadblock of fear. And then you can start having fun. Because what's the point of all this if it's not going to make your life more fun? It doesn't always have to be so serious as well. Parapsychology, the paranormal. There is a tendency in this field, because I've been around long enough and I've seen it ebb and flow. It's all terribly serious, and people have their equipment and their EVP recorders. And I'm convinced that ghosts, if there are them, they would much rather that we approached it with a light-hearted spirit.
Well, besides these 4 books coming out, do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know?
Oh, I'm always working on things. You can find out about me via my socials. I'm always trying to push the envelope and experiment in new areas. Having collaborated now closely with some of the world's leading scientists researching consciousness at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, I have learned so much from working with scientists, because I'm not a scientist, I'm a theologian, I'm an academic, I'm an author, I'm not a scientist. But I learned from working with scientists that they learn as much from their failures as their successes. So, Jeff, if this podcast episode completely tanks, it's a learning curve for me, and I guess for you, for what your channel wants to hear. And that's glorious, as Thomas Edison said, when he said with the light bulb, I've just found, thousands of ways that didn't work. They weren't failures. And that's how I approach everything that I do. Every book I do is is an experiment to help me evolve, and hopefully along the way to ignite something in other people to learn and grow as well, and just love this adventure of life, because it is a precious, priceless opportunity. And the older I get, the more grateful I am to have the opportunity to do what I do, and to live and breathe and dream again every day.
Do you accept ghost stories from the public? And if so,
That's all my books. I wrote The Afterlife is Real actually 10 years ago for Simon and Schuster. It's one of my most popular books. And but the thing is, I don't want people to think of ghost stories that they have to go and see a ghoul or it's terrifying and scary. Ghost stories are actually when you have had a sign from a departed loved one. For example, you smelt something that reminded you of them and you just sensed their presence, or you had a dream of them, or you believe that they are somehow protecting and guiding you. This falls under the umbrella of angels. I mean, I think angels, ghosts, spirits, all of this for me, I'm bringing the spirituality into haunting. You know, that's what people write to me about. But I do also, I get, your traditional ghost stories, the ones you kind of see on TV, which is so popular, but a lot of them fall into the basket of afterlife signs. A sense that this life doesn't end with death. And I'll try and close this with you may think it's morbid, but it's not. If you've ever had the privilege of sitting with someone when they pass, I had that. I worked in a hospice before I went to university. You will know when the moment comes, it's peaceful often. And when you look at the body, their spark, their essence, their consciousness, their soul is somewhere else. It's almost liberating. That wonderful Mary Fry poem, "Do not stand in my grave at weep," which I think should be mandatory at every funeral, to help people understand that you can have a relationship in spirit that is infinite and eternal. And all the modern science at the moment is pointing to the idea that we are all energy, and that energy can't be destroyed after death. It transmutes into something else. So I hope that's not morbid, but I think it's actually very uplifting. We are here to learn and grow, experience everything we can in the human state. And then what happens on the other side, it is the next great adventure where we will continue to learn and grow again. And maybe sometimes in that other side, if we've done our homework over there, that we get a chance to maybe help someone back here on Earth through sending them a dream or a sign.
Well, if you're accepting more stories, how should the people submit them to you?
Sorry, I'm not terribly good at self-promotion, as you can see. I spend a lot of time researching and writing. My email is angeltalk710@aol.com. My children often say, "Why are you still on AOL?" It's because I'm not very technical, but that's the one. And over the years, but when I started out actually 25 years ago, people used to write to me and I used to get sacks of mail. I used to get wonderful letters written. That's stopped now. It's more messages and emails. But if you would like to email me, and my email is always, it's in the back of Haunted World. It's in every book I write, is my email saying, send me your stories. Let's talk about them, because I would like to help you understand them and why this is happening to you. Often it's happening to you because it's a wake-up call. Your dreaming mind, it typically starts with vivid dreams as well. Your dreaming mind wants you to wake up to the fact that you are more than you think you are, and that there's more to this human life than meets the eye.
Theresa, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Oh my goodness, we live in a haunted world. And that is something to celebrate, because it's a way of learning from the past, keeping those we have loved and lost alive. And I will say what I say time and time again in many interviews when I talk about the possibility of life and after death. Death ends a life, not a relationship. You can carry on having a connection with someone in spirit through your dreams, through your memories, and through thinking of them in a positive way.
Theresa, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
No, thank you for all that you are and do. I truly appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.